Welcome to class. I'm about to take you all to school. This is the biggest classroom I've ever been in. And so because of that, I can't see all of you up close. Take out your cell phones and turn them off. Or I will come into the audience after you. Turn them off.
It's off.
It's off?
It's off.
You're sure?
Sure.
Okay, because I know where you work. Okay. All right. Crazy. Welcome. Okay, I know we have a few teachers in the house tonight, so let's see. Where are all the teachers? Raise your hands. Teachers. Look at that. Yes. Servants with humility. Okay, let's have a little poll, a little test. How many of you teachers have been teaching for 5 years? Okay, so you have 1, 2, 3, 5. Okay, you've been teaching more than 5. How many teaching 10 years? Okay, I like it. 15? 20? Oh, you don't even go to school. I know you. Did you do your homework? Okay, yeah. 25 years. There we go. I love you. You're awesome. We have a lot of teaching experience in the house tonight. And this class is all about teachers, the servants of humility, who are incredible human beings. And it's crazy. There was one day I was putting this whole class together, and I'm walking down the hall, and a friend of mine stepped out of a room, and he said, "Hey, I was just talking to my students about your class, your show. Would you like to come in and talk to them?" I said, "Sure. I love to talk. That's why there's nobody else up here." And so I went in, and he introduced me to those who did not know me. He said, he's doing a show, and he's going to tell you about it. And so I said, my show is about the greatest profession in the world, teaching. And one young man snickered. I said, "Oh, you laugh. Can you name a profession which does not require education?" And another young man said, "Baseball player." And so forget the fact that only in the majors do they make millions of dollars. I said, "Coaches or teachers?" Shut him up. I asked again, "Can you name a profession which does not require an education?" Profession, not a job, profession. They could not. So by virtue of that fact, is teaching not the greatest profession in the world, since it has its impact on every other profession that there is? Yes, I say yes, it is. And that young man's laughing is symptomatic of what's going on in this country, because teachers and the teaching profession are constantly belittled, constantly put down. And I believe I can illustrate my point. Somebody asks you what you do for a living. You say, "I'm a teacher." And they say, "Must be nice having summers off." Mm-hmm. Okay, teacher friends, how many of you really have summers off? No. What are we doing? Recertifying? Oh, technology in the classroom, because that's different every day. Methodologies, curriculum reinvention, all of these things, constantly staying on top of it. Looking at what we did the year before, reviewing so how we can be better the next year. When do you think we create the tests? Not while you're in class. That's outside of school. In fact, if you look at the 8-hour teacher day, multiply it by 2 because figure an hour for every class. That's a 16-hour day. Working on weekends, holidays. Spending a lot of time working on school when we're not in school. And I had a chance one day to teach another human being what teaching was all about. I needed to buy a new car. Had over 100,000 miles on my Prius. I love my Prius. I was spoiled with the gas mileage, but had over 100,000 miles, and I had to start putting money into it. And when you go to your mechanic and your mechanic says, "We need to talk," that's not a good thing. But, okay, so I could continue putting money into this car that I love so much. First new car I ever owned, and I owned it outright. Or I could trade it in. So my wife and I discussed it. We'll trade it in. Okay. And I knew what I wanted. And so I had to do the research where I could find the best deal. And I found it. So I pull into the dealership, and you know how they are. They're like piranhas in a feeding frenzy. Man comes out and says, "Can I help you, sir?" I said, "Yes, I'm looking for this. And I want this, this, and this. I don't need a lot of bells and whistles. I need to go from A to B, good gas mileage. This is what I want. Do you have it in this color?" He says, "Yes, we do. It's right back there. I'll meet you back there." So I go back there, and he goes to get the keys and the tag, and I see my car, and it's exactly what I want. Base model, no bells and whistles, no frills. I like it. And we get in, and we're driving around. I'm going down 441. a little fast. Okay, a lot fast. And he says, can we go back to the dealership now? This is in Hollywood. I was already past Plantation. Okay, so we go back to the dealership, and we're having idle chit-chat, as they will do. And I pulling into the dealership, Toyota of Hollywood. And he says, what do you do for a living? I said, I'm a teacher. And what do you think he said? Must be nice having summers off. And I was able to stop the car right there as if God said, oh, yes, you may. And I stopped the car and said, teachers don't have summers off. He goes, oh, no, I need to get out. Because then I just started to teach him. Oh, no, over the summer, we're working all the time. We work on weekends. I know teachers, and you do too. Students and teachers, you know teachers who are in at 7 o'clock in the morning. We're not 8 to 3. That's all they see is 8 to 3. But we're in 7 o'clock in the morning teaching. After school, mentoring, tutoring, coaching. Forensics coach goes around the country on weekends on her own time. Yes, you get a stipend. Have you ever divided the stipend over hours that you work? You don't want to. It's not minimum, okay? That's how it is. Football coaches are teaching all day, and then they're looking at tape. Well, and tonight, they're coaching from 3 to 6, then looking at tape, then coming in the next morning and doing it all over again. I know theater teachers who arrive at 7 o'clock in the morning and sometimes don't leave until 11 o'clock at night, and then do the same thing the next day. So teachers don't just work 8 to 3. So I was able to teach him that. And thinking about all of this, I thought, let's start with a lesson. Let's start with the aptly named first day of school. You know the apprehension that you have on the first day of school? Everybody's so nervous about the whole place. First day of school. This is it. The most important moment, the original transgression. If this were writing, this would be the opening line, except you'd be able to go back and change it if you didn't get it right. If this were love at first sight, this would be the moment you bumped into each other, the night you began your mutual confessions. It's time to recalibrate and revise the rambling digression of summer eyes and focus on a more decorous expression. Say the red and yellow leaves of trees that have scattered themselves all over the lawn with abandon and indiscretion. With abandon and indiscretion, be like early autumn air and freshen, because school is now in session. And you know the old expression, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. Now, first impressions are kind of important, aren't they? We tend to judge people on our first impressions. And students come to a school, especially if they come from 8th grade to here, and a class of 30 and a school of 200, to a class of 500 and a school of 2,200, and they're a little scared. And they get people like me. And they're nervous. Students meeting teachers, teachers meeting students, students meeting each other, and students are wondering, okay, is he really as mean as they say? Can you really cheat right in front of her and get away with it? Is he really singing in the halls? Is he jumping on desks, or is he just talking to dead people? And I'm reminded of a teacher week we had about 3 years ago. And a guest speaker was brought in, and I know I was thinking what all of my colleagues were thinking. Dude, you better be entertaining. Because I would so much rather be decorating and preparing my classroom for the first day of school. And I think he was. I didn't talk with anybody else, but I found him entertaining. And he was regaling us with stories of teachers. And there's this one teacher he told us about. And she had some very interesting stories, and I thought I would steal one. Okay, steal is kind of a harsh word. I would borrow. No, use your word, seeker. I would appropriate. Nice SAT word. I would appropriate. So I didn't have a homeroom that year. And I came into my classroom and I wrote on the board, come in, sit down, be quiet. 6 words, 3 lines, really simple instructions. Really simple instructions. And then I waited for the bell to ring to end homeroom. And I climbed on top of my desk. And I folded my arms. And I began breathing deeply in and out of my nose. Which I hear makes me look intimidating. And I went back to breathing deeply in and out of my nose, and the door opened, and you know the student who wants to make an impression because he's going to be way over the top and obnoxious, like he knows everybody. Hey, Mr. Seeger, what do you want to say? He's standing on his desk. I heard it was crazy. And then one brave soul chose to say, Mr. Seeger, what do you want us to do? And I pointed at the board. And I crossed my arms. And I went back to breathing deeply in and out of my nose. And the bell rang, and I sprang from my desk, and they would never know what to expect from the crazy ball man ever again. They would have to be on their toes every single day because God knows what's going to happen in there. Human sacrifice could happen. And you know, if we don't know what to expect, maybe class can be a little entertaining. And the teachers who are entertaining were the teachers that I love the most. I have no problem if you want to stand behind a lectern and lecture. That works for you, that's great. But I like the teachers who are outside of the box, crushing the box even, because I learned a lot from them because I could relate to that. And there are teachers that I know whose students will go and ask the unusual question that they would be afraid to ask their friends. And like, God, you're stupid. What a stupid question is that? Those teachers in your next lesson plan would be a poet teaching math and history. I'm the one they come to when they need to know if history is positive or negative, if math rhymes, if poetry is art, or it's just poets who are. Because those who do not know poetry will be doomed to repeat it. Pop quiz. Who won the battle of the imagination? What makes people think pie is easy? True or false? Power corrupts, and power corrupts metaphorically. How many poems were martyred in the Colosseum, fed to ferocious perpendicular lions? Do equilateral triangles ever fall in love with squares? Take all the problems of the world. Solve. Be sure to calculate your answer in number sentences. Word problem. If an elephant begins crossing the Alps going south, while at the exact same time the number 5 begins writing a metaphor in the opposite direction, how long will it take for the word love to round itself off to the nearest poem? Extra credit question. What's B plus B? 2B. That's not the question. What's 2B times 2? 4B. What's 4B times 11C? 44 BC. Friends, Romans, countrymen. So none of your work all the time. Because all of life's a makeup test. And all roads lead to rhyme. Well, I'm not sure if all roads lead to rhyme, but I know rhyme is an important element to use in the classroom to teach a lesson. And I believe I can make my point with this. Students, how many of you have struggles with vocabulary? It's okay. Yeah, it's okay. You can admit. Yeah, there we go. Now, those same people with their hands up, how many of you know all the lyrics of your favorite songs? Every single one of you. And you know why? It's the rhyme. It's the rhythm. It's the pattern. Right? That's how you don't download the lyrics, do you? And remember, I got to know this before everybody else. Okay, maybe Hamilton you do. But not this. Like Lafayette. Okay, no. This is not Hamilton. I don't look like Lin-Manuel Miranda, although I could be King George. That would be cool. But it's the rhyme. And a man named Blake Harrison figured this out. He said, I can never understand why I couldn't get my vocabulary, but I knew all the lyrics of my favorite rap songs. He said, maybe that's the key. And he mentioned to a friend, maybe I should try something like this for schools. And his friend said, okay, let's do it. He told a bunch of other people, but no one had ever said, let's do it. So Vocabulary was born. Vocabulary is a Brooklyn-based company that teaches and creates educational hip-hop songs about language arts, science, vocabulary, SAT prep. And a study was conducted of 12 schools in Brooklyn. 6 of them used vocabulary, the control group did not. And they found out at the end of the study period that those who used vocabulary had a higher increase in their standardized test scores than those who did not. So rhyming is key. Rhyming can be very key to education. And sometimes rhyming is just fun, and education can be fun. But you know what's not fun? Being unprepared. Like in On Girls Lending Pens, your next lesson. I walked into the classroom and straight to my chair. But when I reached for my pen, it just wasn't there. I had no pen or crayon or pencil. I was stuck before class without a writing utensil. I could have asked the teacher if I had dared, but I knew she would have said, "You're unprepared!" So to be diplomatic and avoid the fight, I quickly turned to the girl on my right. Do you possibly have a pen I could borrow? I'll use it today, have it back by tomorrow. Oh, for sure. What kind? I've got plenty. She turned around with a handful of 20. I really don't care what color or style. I'll take the fountain pen, I said with a smile. Oh, you don't want that one. It comes out all ugly. And it's made of pure gold, she said to me smugly. Okay, how about the blue? No, that one hops. Okay, maybe the green comes out in globs. Black, I'm afraid it's having trouble connecting. Red, I'll need it if we do any in-class correcting. Look, I said, my voice filling with fear, just give me a pen before the teacher gets here. Well, this one always comes out in tons. The yellow one skips and the purple one runs. When the brown one dries, it looks real icky. And the orange one is covered with something sticky. This one's for emergencies in case I get confused. Because it's clean and it's fresh and it's never been used. I keep this one for quizzes because it brings good luck. And the ballpoint is splotchy and the cap is stuck. This one's empty with the silver band and the felt tip will leak all over your hand. This one's cracked. That's gone berserk. And this would be perfect, except it doesn't work. Oh, but here, take this one. This one's fine. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. This one's mine. I think she went on, but I couldn't have cared. I decided it was better to go unprepared. Now, I don't know if going unprepared is ever really a good course of action to take. Would you think, gentlemen? No, not at all, right? Not good. So maybe you ask the person on the other side or the person behind you, unless you're afraid of getting caught by the teacher, which would be bad. But, different approaches, different students, like different learning styles, okay? All my young teachers, like less than 5 years, where are you? Do I have those? Okay, yes. Learning styles, you know all about them, right? They hammer them into you. We all learn differently, okay? There are 3 major learning styles. And my wife, who's also a teacher, said, if you have 30 students in the class, you have 30 different lesson plans because each one of those students learns differently. And it's a teacher's job to figure that out. Okay, so let's just have a little game here, a little poll, not a game really. Show of hands, how many of you learn best with demonstration? Now that would be from the Latin, Latin, monstro, sorry for the handwriting, I didn't write that, that's too neat. Monstro, monstrara, first conjugation Latin meaning to show, to demonstrate. Okay, so how many of you learn best by seeing things? Seeing things, lectures, you see the person, YouTube. Okay, you would be visual learners, okay? So that comes from the Latin video, videre, which is second conjugation, meaning to see, right? Video. Yeah, okay, it's kind of self-explanatory. Okay, how many learn best by hearing? Lectures, books on tape, Audible, you're the biggest fan of Audible? Okay, so you would be an auditory learner from the Latin audio, audire, which is fourth conjugation Latin, okay? Yeah, 3.5 years of Latin. Okay, how about kinesthetic? You learn best by actually doing, getting your hands dirty and jumping in there. Okay, kinesthetic. I don't know what that comes from. I figure it must be Greek because there's a K. Okay, I realize that's probably a stereotype, but that's what I figured it to be. But you learn best by doing. And I would posit the theory that we are all some combination of those, maybe a lot more one than the other two, or maybe kind of across the board. Notice, every student is the same, some combination. So your next lesson, on your lesson, you have your lesson plans out, right? I didn't print this up for nothing. That took a while, the fonts, everything. I had to prepare, I was up late, okay? Your next lesson, who I teach is also what? Some ancient civilizations were denied the land to grow their food and so relied on trade or made their living from the sea. Others raised great temples, cities of mountain and stone, or lived on mountaintops alone. The same is true for the children I teach. It's never a mystery teaching ancient history, who's Egypt, who's Rome, which loner in the corner thinks himself an island nation, and which countries in grade 9 world history have discovered iron weapons and survived through fighting, as opposed to developing an alphabet and therefore a system of writing. So it is with every subject. Who I teach is what I teach. By the time they reach my English class, it is not the students I teach, but all the different parts of speech. The adjectives, flying around the room describing everything, like butterflies with beautiful wings, while the nouns would rather speak of things. The verbs all huddled together in a bunch, shaking and jiggling and hungry for lunch. Lastly, in math, every student is a number. The girls in general even, while the boys are mostly odd. But the odd boy can be even. And even a girl can be odd. Like Sirius Daria, with her 1,000 tiny paper cranes, who lives with her aunt and stays to herself most of the time, indivisible by everything except herself and one, being therefore prime. How many of you were a Daria in class? The quiet ones who sat in the back and prayed that the teacher wouldn't recognize you? Or maybe you were shy and you knew the answer, but for some reason those overly enthusiastic students, pick me, I know. Okay, what's the answer? The ones who just have to be heard all the time, squeaky wheel gets the grease kind of thing. So you further recede and you become a little too quiet and you don't want to answer. Well, it's our job as teachers. One more thing teachers get to do. You have to draw out something from every student because your goal is to hit every student, knowing it may not be possible, but you've got to draw it out of them. And so sometimes you're a little entertaining in class. Maybe you dress up as Shakespeare if you're teaching Romeo and Juliet. Or perhaps you dress up as Christopher Columbus. He never stepped foot on this continent. I just want to say that. One political statement only. There you go. All right? Okay, it's true. All right? Or perhaps you dress up as Julius Caesar if you're talking about Caesar's Gallic Wars. Latin students know what that is. You have to entertain to draw them out. Or you could give them an assignment. A writing assignment. Yes, a writing assignment is an incredible way to find out about somebody, what makes them tick, if they're really, really quiet, like a Daria. Okay? You give them a writing assignment, you give them a prompt that requires a personal response, not something deeply personal that they would tell their priest, no. But something, they've got to express an opinion. And so you get to know at least how they stand on something. All right? And it could be something small, chocolate or vanilla. Okay? But at least you get to find out a little bit about them. And then you've learned that. Now you get to teach them with that project about revising their papers. Like your next lesson. Oh, I think you follow instructions really well. As far as words go, or how to revise your papers. First of all, find a better title. And make it more like yourself. Inventive. A bit punchy, but good at heart. The real problem is you're not telling me enough about far too much. So reach for your pen, the one with ink as red as your blood is blue, and tell me much more, but about much less. Sharpen your mind as if it were a pencil. Wet and hone it to its finest point. Then as you write, press hard, write deeper. Leave the imprint of your words so they may still be read on the underpages of a loose-leaf pad. If some of your sentences are long, amusing puzzles with a syntactic complexity that rivals the brain, make others short. If your paper were to catch fire, make your introduction the paragraph you would rush to save first. And as far as words go, mix the luscious Latinate ones with spicy bits and gritty chunks of good Germanic stuff. Luxuriate in the romance of all languages. Make them all your own tongue. Revise, rewrite, and switch around, and scratch things out, using carets, errors, and asterisks, until you stumble at last on the eloquent. Thank you. Eloquent, like a smooth speech. Eloquent, E-L-O-Q-U-E-N-T. I just like the sound of it. Eloquent. Yes. Any Scrabble players in the room? Scrabble. I have no Scrabble. Okay, so then you're just going to have to take all this as gospel, okay? Scrabble, in the game Scrabble, eloquent will net you 17 points. 8 letters, 17 points. So you'd figure roughly 2 points a letter, except there are E's in the word. And I believe E is the most commonly used vowel in the English language, so those would be 1 point apiece. So 17 minus 2 is 15. Oh. I thought I had problems with math. 15 divided over 6 letters. So you look at it and you think, okay, smart guy, I know it's the Q. Sure, because and right now you're running words through your head. Quiche, quilt, quote, quotidian. Oh, yeah, you thought of that one. Quagmire, you didn't think of quagmire, okay? But what about unique, oblique, technique? They all have Q's in them. It's the Q. And so I did a little research because I like to research things, and it was a challenge, and I like a challenge, especially with language. I like a challenge. So I looked it up, and I found a word, Q-I. Chi is how it's pronounced. The literal definition, wind, air, breath. Life force. It's the central underlying principle of Chinese medicine and martial arts. And if you're playing Scrabble in a classroom, that's a wonderful way to teach SAT. If somebody has a higher vocabulary than you do, play that person because you're going to learn the words, you're going to challenge them, you're going to look them up, and maybe you put them into your own language. Once again, games can be entertaining. I used to have teachers that would give us crossword puzzles, like a separate piece. You read a separate piece? Okay, I taught some of you. Okay, a separate piece. Crossword puzzle, that's a review for the test. You thought it was just to waste time. Or this one, a word search in chemistry class, that's just to waste time. Except all of the terms are chemistry terms. Entertaining, playing games is a wonderful way of learning. Like in our next lesson, playing Scrabble with Eddie. Despite his dyslexia, or perhaps because of it, Eddie can beat every one of my ninth graders in Scrabble. Kick their asses, in fact, and he knows it. Though he can't say it, at least not in those words, because if he said ass in my ninth grade classroom, I'd give him a detention on the spot. Scrabble was made for his mind. Show him a rack of 7 letters, and he'll tell you in an instant 10 different words that use some combination of those letters. His mind hardwired for confusion, for discombobulating vowels and the jangling clangor of consonants. But ask him to spell those 10 words, and he may dare to read deer when the word reads dread. Combine dyslexia with hyperactivity, which now we call ADD, attention deficit disorder, though Eddie imbecilely says DDA. 15 milligrams of Ritalin taken twice a day, dispensed by the nurse. An IQ of 165, and all the hormones of a 14-year-old boy just dying for an education. And you have yourself one horny, whacked-out ninth grade genius, staring at the 7 tiles on his rack, as if getting the letters in the right order would unlock all the secrets of the language. Eddie stares at my face, at the board, at his rack. At his rack, at the board, at my face. And I'm wondering what his dyslexic rearranging mind is doing with my eyes, my ears, and my nose. How many one-eyed Picasso-faced English teachers are staring back at him from the educated audience of his adolescence? How many monsters can he spell with my face? Oh, here comes the word. K-C-U-F. Cuff. Eddie, I think I'm going to have to challenge you on this word. And Eddie reddens. Eddie reddens as if he finally got the punchline to a dirty joke, which in a way he has. Eddie reddens as if I finally caught him swearing, which in a way I haven't yet. And the letters pivot around the K, C, U, F. Oh, well, that's different. Is that okay? Is that okay, Eddie? Is that okay? You landed the F on a double letter space and the K on a double word. That's 34 points, young man. Hot shit, says Eddie. And I give him a detention on the spot. Gave him the detention, but he applied himself. And that's what teachers want. They want their students to apply themselves. Because right down to it, your best teachers are the ones who want you to apply yourself. You don't want to let them down because you don't want them to think any less of you. You want to be the best that you can be. And I'm reminded, we look at all these things, be the best you can be. A word like detention kind of stops us in our tracks. Now, I know some students at detention, whatever, man. And then I know other students, please don't give me a detention, Mr. Seeger, please. Because the punishment they're going to get at home is the parents are going to say, disappointed in you. And that's probably worse than any kind of punishment they could ever get. They disappointed their parents. And there are phrases and words that stop all of us. In fact, here's a little phrase that I've heard a few times. License and registration. I was usually innocent. Or how about this one? Parents, you might recognize this one. Mom, Dad, I can explain. Or this one, and I've never, ever had to answer this question. Thank you, Jesus. Did these pants make me look fat? That would not be good, okay? But there's one phrase that teachers may be known to scrawl across the top of a poorly executed test or quiz. Your next lesson. Please see me. If all the year were playing holidays, to sport would be as tedious as to work. But when they seldom come, they wished for come. And nothing pleaseth but rare accident. Henry IV, Part 1. And speaking of rare accidents, come in. Shuck off your book bag, please. Pull up a chair. Let me tell you why I didn't grade your paper. See, you're either average or lazy, and you better know which one you are. Because I'm sick of hearing, I didn't understand, I don't know why, when the truth is, I don't care and I didn't even try. I know you all. You'd rather be suspected of being stupid because you know you aren't than be accused of being lazy because you know you are. I don't think you're stupid. But if you expected me to fall for that, well, maybe I'm wrong. Which is to say, this is not your best work. I'm not asking you to write the paper over again unless you deleted the file after printing it, in which case, I'm asking you to write the paper over again. Look at the next lines. When this loose behavior I throw off, I pay the debt I never promised. By how much better than my word I am? By so much shall I falsify men's hopes. That's what you're doing, isn't it? You're getting by at 4 so that you can turn up the volume and go all the way to 8, and I'll be impressed. Well, life goes to 11, baby, and it keeps on going. So tell me I ain't seen nothing yet. Tell me you can do much better than this. Falsify my hopes and shine. Otherwise, you'll be what you are now. Dismissed. Okay, now might be a pretty good time to take a little bit of a break. Get out, stretch your legs a little bit, maybe get something to eat or drink. I'm telling you can go get something to eat or drink. All right? I just ask one favor. Please get something to eat or drink, but when you come in, if you haven't finished, please put it away so the wrapper does not disrupt anybody else's participation in the class. Okay, once again, I will come into the audience. All right, and I will see you back here in Seeger 10, not South Florida 10, okay? Oh, good, you're back. You understand the concept of time. Good, thank you. Thank you for being here. So during the break, did you take out your phone, you tweet, you Insta, Finsta, Tumblr, not the other T ones? MySpace. No. Hey, yeah, I was checking my Twitter accounts. I have a few. I have Insta. By the way, Insta, let's do this. Let's have a little bit of fun. Okay, all right. Here we go. Okay, any day now would be fine. Oh, I have no idea who that is. Okay. I need technical help. Where's a 15-year-old? Okay. Sit down. Like the egg. I'm not liking the egg. Okay. Okay. Shh. It's a sensitive device. Okay. Here we go. Okay. Oh, I'm facing the wrong way. That's brilliant. Okay. Here we go. Okay. So here we go. Selfie. 1. There we go. Okay. That's good. That's good. That's good. Yeah, okay. Oh, would you take a picture of me with this fine woman? You're his mother?
Yes.
I'm so sorry. Okay. But I was checking my Instagram and my Twitter. I have a few Twitter accounts. And there's a Twitter account I created a few years ago for my students, my English students. I teach one class of freshman English. And I thought, how cool. They like social media, so let's use that in the classroom a little bit. You may tweet if you're reading some piece of literature. Tweet about the literature. And if you're smart, you will check to see if the author has Twitter. For instance, John Green, Fault in Our Stars, Looking for Alaska, Paper Towns, has Twitter. And so if you're reading this, Mr. Seeger, love Paper Towns, at John_Green. he might actually respond and then engage you in a conversation. And how cool would that be? But there was a rule. And this was a rule when there were only 140 characters in Twitter, which hurt some people. I didn't say anything. Hurt some people. 140 characters, but the rule was this. You had to tweet in grammatically correct sentences. And you could not abbreviate. You could not use the letters you are for the words you are. Absolutely not. In fact, I once had a student say out loud, LOL. Why don't you just laugh out loud? I'll understand. Or this one, I was grading some essays, and I was talking to a class about their essays, and I asked a question, and this kid started with cuz, and I stopped him. And then I asked someone else, and this young lady started with cuz. No, we are not a member of the same family tree. This is not out of Shakespeare. Good morrow, cuz. No, we are not related. Or the interjection of uncertainty. And all my students know about this. Raise your hand. Yes, no. We were here. I know where she was. Where were you? I was waiting for my girlfriend, whatever. Sure. Oh, I'm going to get in trouble for that. Okay. I'm getting in trouble. It was clean. I get in trouble. Interjection of uncertainty bothers me. And I find the more and more that students are texting that my language is getting butchered. And there's one that really has bothered me all the years I've been teaching. And Taylor Molly had heard it so many times from so many different students that he was inspired to write a poem. And this is your next lesson. Like Lily, like Wilson. I'm writing the poem that will change the world. And it's Lily Wilson in my office door. Lily Wilson, the recovering like addict, worst I've ever seen. So like bad that my entire 9th grade class started calling her like Lily, like Wilson, like. Until I declared my classroom a like-free zone. And she could not speak for days. When she did, it was to say, this is like so hard. Now I have to think before I say anything. Well, it's for your own good, Lily, even if you don't like it. I'm writing the poem that will change the world, and it's Lily Wilson at my office door. Lily's writing a research paper for me about how homosexuals shouldn't be allowed to adopt children. I'm writing the poem that will change the world, and it's like Lily, like Wilson at my office door. She's having trouble finding sources, which is to say ones that back her up. They all argue for what I thought I was against. And it took 4 years of college, 3 years of graduate school, and every incidental teaching experience I have ever had to let out only, wow, Lily, what are you going to do about that? And she said, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think I want to switch sides. And I want to tell her to do more than just believe it, but to enjoy it. That changing your mind is one of the best ways of finding out whether or not you still have one. Or that minds are like parachutes. It doesn't matter what you pack them with, as long as they open at the right time. Good God, Lily, I want to say. You make me feel like a teacher, and who could ask to feel more than that? I want to say all this, but let out only, Lily, I am like so impressed with you. So I finally taught somebody something, namely how to change her mind. And learned in the process that if I'm ever going to change the world, it's going to be one 9th grader at a time. Yes. A battle of language. Yeah, that's fun. We'll just do that. A battle of language followed by a battle of punctuation. It constantly amazes me when I ask a student and they follow up with a question. I say, no, I asked you for the answer. Why are you following up with a question? They say, well, it's this, you know? Or, okay? Are you asking me to confirm your status as a human being when you say that? You're not certain of your answer. And I find that this is happening more and more. Like the next lesson. I know the lessons are coming fast and hard now, okay? Like totally like whatever, you know? In case you haven't noticed, it has somehow become uncool to sound like you know what you're talking about or believe strongly in what you're saying. Invisible question marks and parenthetical "you knows" have been attaching themselves to the ends of our sentences, even when those sentences aren't like questions. You know? Now, don't think I'm uncool just because I've noticed this, okay? It's just like, the word on the street, it's like what I've heard. Declarative sentences so called because they used to like declare things to be true as opposed to others are like totally, not. Have been infected by a totally hip and tragically cool interrogative tone. I mean, what has happened to our convictions? Where are the limbs out on which we once walked? Have they been like chopped down with the rest of the rainforest? Or do we have like nothing to say? Has society become so like totally, absolutely, that we've just gotten to a point where it's like, whatever. So actually, our disarticulation ness is just a clever sort of thing to disguise the fact that we've become the most aggressively inarticulate generation to come along since, a long, long time ago. I entreat you. I implore you. I exhort you. I challenge you to speak with conviction. To say what you believe in a manner that bespeaks the determination with which you believe it. Because contrary to the wisdom of the bumper sticker, it is not enough these days to simply question authority. You have to speak with it too. Amen, amen, hallelujah. Yeah, let me have an amen. There we go. And teachers, we want you to speak with conviction, but we also want you to write with conviction. Gave an essay once, and you had to choose between this or this, and the person gave me both. You don't want to make a choice? Make a choice. As long as you can back up your choice, then you're not wrong. It's your choice, and I'm cool with that. But we want you to write with conviction. Well, that requires you follow the writing steps. Yes. First of all, brainstorm, right? And then what do you do after you brainstorm? This is like teaching my class. I was like pulling teeth. Okay, you outline, right? You outline and then you rough draft, right? And then you revise and you edit, revise, edit, revise, edit, revise, edit, revise, edit, revise, edit, and then you have your final draft, right? But there have been plenty of times I've held a draft in my hand and I know it was the first and only draft that was ever created. And how do I know that? Spell check. They did it probably that morning, 6:30 in the morning. No spell check. Or maybe they did spell check. But they didn't do grammar check. And they didn't ask anybody to proofread their paper for them, which is problematic as we've seen before. Right? Proofread the paper. Like your next lesson. The impotence of proofreading. Has this ever happened to you? You work very hard on a paper for English class, and then get a very low grade, like a D or even a D equals, and all because you are the world's liverwurst spoiler? Proofreading your peppers is a matter of the utmost impotence. This is a problem that affects manly students. I myself was such a bed spiller once upon a term that my English teacher in my sophomore year, Mrs. Myth, said I would never get into a good colleague. And that's all I wanted was to get into a good colleague. Not just anal community, colleague. I needed a place that offered me intellectual simulation. I needed to be challenged dentally. Yeah, I know this makes me sound like a stereo. But I really wanted to go to an Ivory Legal colleague. So I needed to improvement. Or gone would be my dream of going to Harvard, jail, or prison. In prison, New Jersey. So I got myself a spell checker and figured I was on Sleazy Street. But there are several missed aches that a spell checker can't catch. For instance, if you accidentally leave a word, your spell checker won't put it in you. And God, for billing purposes only, you should have serial problems with Tory spelling. Your spell checkoff might replace word with one you had absolutely no intention of using. Because what do you want it to do? It only does what you tell it to do. You're the one with your hand on the mouth going click, click, click. It just shows you how embargo one careless click of the mouth can be. Which reminds me, this one time during my junior mint, my teacher read my entire paper out loud to all my assmates. I'm not joking. I'm totally serial. It was the most humidifying experience of my life. Being laughed at publicly. So, do yourself a favor and follow these 2 pieces of advice. 1, there is no prostitute for careful editing. No prostitute whatsoever. And 3, when proofreading your peppers, the red penis, your friend. Now, perhaps, if you had someone proofread your paper, that might not have happened. Although with some students, oh, no, that's fine, man. That's totally fine, playing a joke on you. So proofread your paper. So if you write it enough in advance, you can ask someone, hey, look, give me your paper, I'll give you mine. We'll proofread, we'll check them out. Does your argument make sense? How's your grammar? Okay. And then we'll turn it into the bald man later. Okay. And you might actually get a better grade. One way that you can proofread each other's work is a group project. I know. See, the parents are the ones who are gasping because they're the ones who do the project. And my wife and I discovered there are probably 4 different types of people who do a group project. 1, the overachiever. That's the one with the 98% who still wants extra credit. That's the one who says, after getting a test back, oh no! And everybody says, what happened? I only got a 96. And everybody who got a B is planning her death. Meanwhile, the people who got a C, thank God I passed. Thank you. You have type 2. Type 2, they're a little afraid to show initiative. They're smart people, but they can't quite get it. So you know what? I tell you what. You tell me what you want me to do, I'll do it. I'll get it done. And you know, you can trust them. They'll get the job done, but they're a little afraid. Project. They don't want anybody else's grade to suffer because oftentimes the group project, everyone gets the same grade. And if you're pulling your same weight, then that's good. But then you have the 3rd type, the excuse maker. My hamster was sick. I don't know what happened to the habit trail. It was bad. He died. That has no bearing on our grade. But the 4th type is worse. We didn't even know you were part of our project. Are you even in this class? But a good group project teaches not only the people in the project, but teaches the teacher as well. Say that fast. Teacher teaches teacher, okay? Like your next lesson. Tony Steinberg, brave 7th grade Viking warrior. Have you ever seen a Viking ship made out of popsicle sticks and balsa wood? Coils of brown thread for ropes? 16 oars made from chopsticks? And a red and yellow sail made from a ripped piece of a little baby brother's footy pajamas? I have. He died with his sword in his hand and so went straight to heaven. The Vikings would often bury their bravest warriors in ships or set them adrift and on fire. floating islands of flames, the soul of the brave warrior, rising slowly with the smoke. To understand life in Scandinavia in the Middle Ages, you must first understand the construction of the Viking ship. So here's what I want the class to do. I want you to build me a miniature Viking ship. You have a month to complete the assignment. You can use whatever materials you want, but you must all work together like warriors. These are the kinds of projects I'm known for as a history teacher, like the Greek shield project, or the marshmallow catapult project, or the medieval castle of chocolate cake. Actually, that was a disaster. But there was the Egyptian pyramid project. Have you ever seen a family of 4 standing around a card table after dinner, each one holding one triangular side of a miniature cardboard Egyptian pyramid until the glue finally dries? I haven't either. But Mrs. Steinberg said it took 90 minutes. And even with a little brother on one side saying, "This is a stupid pyramid, Tony. If I get this pyramid next year, I will demand that my pyramid not take 90 minutes to dry." And Tony on the other side saying, "Shut up! Shut up, you idiot! If you let go before the glue dries, I will disembowel you with your Sony PlayStation." It was the best family time they'd spent together since Hanukkah. He died with his sword in his hand and so went straight to heaven. Excuse me, if that's true, if you died with your sword in your hand, you go straight to Valhalla, then if you were like an old Viking about to die of old age, could you keep your sword right by your bed so in case you felt like you might die of old age, you could reach out and grab it? If I were a Viking god, I don't think I'd fall for that. But if I were an old Viking about to die of old age, that's exactly what I would do. You're a genius. He died with his sword in his hand and so went straight to heaven. Tony Steinberg had been missing for 6 weeks from school before we finally found out what was wrong. And the 12 boys left, whispered the name of the disease as if you could catch it from saying it too loud. We'd been warned. The middle school head had come to class and said Tony was going to come to school on Friday, but he's had a tough time. The medication he's taken has made all his hair fall out. So nobody stare, nobody point, nobody laugh. I always said I liked teaching in a private school because I could talk about God in the classroom and not be breaking the law. And I sure talk about God a lot in the classroom. I mean, history, that's easy. Even the Egyptian pyramid project is essentially a spiritual undertaking. But how can you teach math and not believe in a God? A God of perfect points and planes, surrounded by right angles and archangels of varying degrees. Such a God would not give cancer to a 7th grade boy, wouldn't make all his hair fall out from chemotherapy, totally bald with a jacket and tie on Friday morning. And I don't just mean Tony Steinberg. Not one single boy in my class had hair that day. The other 12 had all shaved their heads in solidarity. Have you ever seen 13 bald-headed 7th grade boys? All pointing at each other, all staring, all laughing? I have. And it's a beautiful sight. Almost as striking as 12 boys. 6 weeks later, on a Saturday morning outside a synagogue, their heads bowed, holding hands in a circle around the smoldering remains of a miniature Viking ship they've set on fire. The soul of the brave warrior rising slowly with the smoke. That's a project where everyone learns. The empathy of 13-year-old boys they learned from their classmates. They did it without provocation. It was their idea. That's based on a true story. I read it in People magazine many, many years ago. They did show up that first day of school with their heads completely shaved. One father even shaved his head out of solidarity for this boy. And a group project can sometimes go beyond the lesson. The lesson beyond the lesson is what teachers are striving for. As Taylor Molly says, we teach for the burn, the light bulb moment. You know, when you're teaching in class and all of a sudden you see that kid who struggled, get it. The light bulb figuratively goes on over his head or her head. And light bulb moments are contagious. And then somebody else starts to get it. And all of a sudden, they're popping up everywhere. And there you feel the warm glow of the miracle of education because students are getting it. I like to say, I don't drive your education bus, you do. I'm just a tour guide. I will open up the door for you, but you have to walk through. Education is the miracle, like your next lesson miracle workers. Sunday nights, I lie awake, as all teachers do, and wait for sleep to come, as if sleep were the last of my students to arrive. My grading is done, my lesson plans are in order, and still, sleep wanders the hallways like freshmen in liturgical choir. I'm a teacher. This is what we do. Like a painter paints or a sculptor sculpts, a preacher preaches, and a teacher teaches. This is who we are, experts in the art of explanation. We know the difference between the questions to answer and the questions to ask. That's a very interesting question. What do you think? If two boys are fighting, I break it up. But if two girls are fighting, I wait until it's over and drag what's left to the nurse's office. I'm not your mother, your father, your jailer, your torturer, or your biggest fan in the whole wide world, even if sometimes I am all of these things. I know you can do these things I make you do. That's why I make you do them. I'm a teacher. That's what we do. One night in a restaurant, the server said, "Will there be anything else?" And I said, "No, thanks, just the check, please." And she said, "Are you sure you don't want to look at the dessert menu?" I knew I'd become a teacher, for better or worse, when I snapped, "What did I just say? Don't make me repeat myself." In the quiet moments of dawn, I create writing assignments and print them out without spell checking them, because I'm a teacher. And teachers don't make spelling mistakes, do they? So yes, as a matter of fact, the new dress code will apply to all 9th, 10th, and 112th grades. And if you need an extension on your essay examining the pubic wars from an hysterical perspective, you may have only until January 331st. I trust that won't be a problem for anyone. I like to lecture on love and responsibility. I hold forth on compassion, eloquence, humility, and charity. At the drop of a hat, I will speak about honesty and the importance of telling the truth always. And when my students say, "Are we going to be responsible for this?" I say, "If not you, then who?" You don't think my generation will be responsible, do you? We're the ones who got you into this mess. Now you're our only hope. And when they say, "What we meant was, are we going to be tested on this?" I say, every single day of your lives. Once, I put a pencil on the desk of a student who was looking through her backpack for a pencil, but she didn't see me do it. So when I walked to the other side of the classroom, and she raised her hand to ask if she could borrow a pencil, I intoned, "In the name of Socrates and Jesus and all the gods of teaching, I declare you already possess everything you will ever need, including a pencil. Shazam!" She still had not seen the pencil. "You are definitely the weirdest teacher I have ever..." Ah! "How did you do that? You're a miracle worker." I just gave you what I knew you needed before you knew you needed it. Thanks for the compliment. I'm just the worker. Education is the miracle. I'm just the worker. I'm a teacher. And that is what we do. All right, our next lesson. The first time I saw Taylor Mali perform was on HBO's Deaf Poetry. And students said, "Mr. Seeger, there's a show on HBO. You need to see it." And that's back when I had HBO. And I was home one night, and it was midnight, and let's turn on HBO. And HBO's Deaf Poetry starts. Oh, okay. So I jump up, and I grab a blank cassette, and I put it in the VCR. Google VCR. Video cassette recorder. It's a museum piece. Ask your parents. Don't. It's before TiVo. And so I put the tape in and I pressed record. And the first poet that Most Deaf, the host, introduced was Taylor Mali. And he came out and he did this poem. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I recorded this, because my wife, once again, is a teacher. She was doing an improv show that night. She came home and I said, "Here we go. Here's our new teacher. Here's our inspiration for why we do what we do." And she loved it. And I found out there's a story behind the poem, What Teachers Make. That Taylor Mali was at a party, New Year's Eve party, 1997. And he's sitting there, and there was a young lawyer there. The arrogant, stereotypical lawyer, all about the cash. And he found out that Taylor was a teacher. And he could not wrap his mind around why someone would take on a job that didn't pay what his paid. And then he said to everyone in attendance, "Anyone willing to take on a job where they're overworked and underpaid is of questionable intelligence and probably shouldn't be teaching anyway." And Taylor Mali was furious inside. And he bit his tongue because he didn't have a comeback. And so he laughed politely with everyone else and went home, and he woke up January 1st, 1998, and he wrote down this poem, aptly entitled, What Teachers Make, Objection Overruled, or you can always go to law school if things don't work out for you. He said the problem with teachers is, what's a kid going to learn from someone who decided his best option in life was to become a teacher? He said it's true what they say about teachers. Those who can do, those who can't teach. I decided to bite my tongue instead of his and resist the temptation to remind the other dinner guests that it's also true what they say about lawyers. Because we're eating, after all, it's supposed to be polite conversation. I mean, you're a teacher. Be honest. What do you make? I wished he hadn't done that. Asked me to be honest. Because you see, I have a little policy about honesty and ass-kicking. If you ask me for it, well, then I have to let you have it. You want to know what I make? I make kids work harder than they ever thought they could. I can make a C+ feel like a Congressional Medal of Honor and an A- feel like a slap in the face. How dare you waste my time with anything less than your very best? I can make kids sit for 50 minutes in study hall in absolute silence. No, you may not work in groups. No, you may not ask the question, why won't I let you go to the bathroom? Because you're bored and you don't really need to go to the bathroom, do you? I make parents tremble in fear when I call home. Hi, I hope I haven't called it a bad time. I just wanted to talk with you about something your son said in school today. To the biggest bully in the whole class, he said, leave the kid alone. I still cry sometimes, don't you? That was the noblest act of courage I've ever seen. I make parents see their children for who they are and what they can be. You want to know what I make? I make kids wonder. I make them question. I make them criticize. I make them apologize and mean it. I make them write. I make them read. I make them spell definitely beautiful. Definitely beautiful. Definitely beautiful. Over and over and over again until they will never misspell either one of those words ever again. I make them show all their work in math and hide it in the final draft in English. And I make them understand that if you've got this, then you follow this. And if anyone ever dares try to judge you by what you make, you give them this. Let me break it down for you so you know what I say is true. Teachers make a damn difference. Now, what about you? Thank you. Yes, teachers make a damn difference. They come in and they put it all out on the line every single day. And I read a blog over the summer, a teacher's blog, and a parent emailed and said, I think that if a kid fails the standardized test, the teacher should be fired. Well, what about students who just don't want to learn? What about the student who comes in and immediately puts his head down on the desk? And you gently remind him to take out his notebook or his Chromebook and a pen and pay attention instead of seeing the back of his head when he's talking to the people behind him. A teacher should be held accountable for that. The first teacher is the parent. Taylor Malley worked 9 years in the classroom. And then he left to a bigger classroom. He teaches writing workshops around the world, teaches poetry, and he works to inspire other people to be teachers. In fact, he had a 10-year goal to somehow work with people to inspire them to become teachers. And it didn't happen in 10 years. It happened in 12. Well, he was growing his hair out. And after the 1,000th person became a teacher, he cut off 12 inches of his hair and donated to the American Cancer Society. Teaching is very important to Taylor Malley. He said, those who walk that noble path need to be reminded that there's an army of educated and grateful citizens who has their backs. Someone needs to remind teachers they are dearly loved, and Taylor Malley is that guy. And hopefully you'll join the ranks of those people tonight. Well, one night I was sitting at home watching television, because I do that. And I'm on my iPad, and I'm looking at my Facebook page for this class, and there's a message in the inbox. So I click on it. It was from Taylor Malley. Because he knew about the show. We've been in communication. This is not something unknown to him. He knew this was happening tonight. He tweeted about it yesterday. And he said, what poem do you end D&D with? Because if you're up for it, I have a new one. I said, well, I end with what teachers make. The first one I ever saw you do, the first one I ever learned. But yes, I'd be open for it, and thank you so much for entrusting me with your work. His response, email, please. And 5 minutes later, I was looking at this poem, our last lesson of the evening. 10 things I've learned since leaving the classroom that I hope are true, or why I'll always have a job as a poet as long as anyone is told they're too smart to be a teacher. 1. Two, if you're having trouble starting at the beginning, don't start there. Start with the part you know by heart. Start in the middle or start at the end. There are such things as skill and craft and art. Just don't be that person who doesn't begin because you have no idea where to start. 3, sometimes you have to do things in an order only you understand. 8, the most important lessons are worth learning again and again. 8, the most important lessons are worth learning again and again. 5, there are teachers who dazzle from the front of the classroom and those who coach quietly from the back. The first kind get most of the attention, but the second kind do just as good a job. There are also teachers who suck. Literally. They suck the joy and curiosity out of children, and they must be stopped. We must get them out of the teaching profession. 6, I might be more useful to the teaching profession outside the classroom than I was in it. Then again, I might be a better poet than I was a teacher. We'll never know, and I'm okay with that. 7, if you want to raise students' test scores in reading and math, don't cut funding for music, arts, drama, and dance. It doesn't work that way. The arts aren't like the ice cream you get as reward after finishing the vegetables of your more important subjects. I don't understand why that is. It just is. And I'm okay with that. 8, the most important lessons are worth learning again and again. 9, business consultants will tell you that if you can't test something and measure it, then you don't really know what it is. And I'm sure that's true in business. But what if you really don't know what something is? What do you measure? What can you test? Is it so bad not to know what something is but still have faith that it works even though you're not sure why? Does that sound too much like prayer? Talk to me when you know how to measure curiosity, safety, hunger, and the sheer love of learning. Last time I checked, there was no test yet for joy. 4, go back and fill in the holes. Check your work. Make it strong. Life is tough. Polish what first you left rough. 1, don't ever tell anyone they're too smart to be a teacher. We need the very best of you. And it's not important if your students like you. What is important is that you love them, especially if you don't like them. And finally, 10, I may have left the classroom, but there's not a day I am not still taught. Everyone is a teacher, every hour, every minute. In fact, this is my classroom, and I love you. So that means you're in it. That is our lesson for the evening. There's a homework assignment. Of course, I'm a teacher. There's always a homework assignment. You thought you were going to get off easy? No. There's a homework assignment. If there's something Taylor Malley wrote that I communicated to you tonight that reminds you of a teacher who inspired you to work smarter, to be the best you could be, find that teacher. And if he or she is still walking the planet, thank them. Gratitude is priceless. You know, the great teacher Gandhi once said, be the change you wish to see in the world. And I like that a lot. And I changed that a little bit. So I will now leave you with the sentence I leave my students with at the end of every class, every day. Be a force for positive change in the world today. Peace. Class dismissed.
Woo-wee!